game of the year. Philly-Dallas, in Dallas, the rematch after week 9.
Yeah, game of the year. So the Cowboys are favored by 3.5 over the Eagles. Eagles are 10-2. Cowboys are 9-3. Considering the Eagles have 2 games left versus the Giants, if the Eagles win this game, they functionally speaking will clinch the NFC East and the 1 seed in the NFC.
And Jalen Hurts functionally secures the MVP, in my opinion.
Maybe we have to come back to that, but I think if Dak loses the MVP if they don't win this game, because if Dak, I don't know if Dak will, whether it's fair or not. I don't know if Dak will win the MVP if Cowboys have lost to Brock Purdy and the Niners and Jalen Hurts and the Eagles twice. Whether or not that's fair, he played well. I kind of do think that will matter. Also, though, if the Cowboys win, I do think Dak will definitely be the front runner as long as he plays well. Because if the Cowboys win, they'll still have a shot at the 1 seed in the NFC. They'd have to like really play well down the stretch. But I don't know where you guys want to start. But like, I don't know, Craig, do you buy Dak as the MVP? Like, I'm curious what you think happens against the Eagles this week.
I do buy him as the MVP right now. However, I think this is the perfect spot for Dak to just flop. All the stars are aligning for Dak to just lay an egg in this game. I mean, he's basically beat up on 6 bad teams. The one good team they played was the Eagles, which he had a good game against the Eagles in week 9. He threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. They lost. But, the rub on Dak for his entire career is a little bit Kirk Cousinsy. It's been, he shines when it doesn't matter and he flops when it does matter. When it's a big game, when it's the playoffs, that's when he starts to crumble. And that's why he'll never be in that upper tier. And right now, he's in this interesting middle area where he's been so hot for 6 weeks now. His fantasy numbers are through the roof. His on the field, eyeball test is through the roof. Like he's playing basically as perfect as you can possibly play. And the Eagles are playing terribly defensively. They're like as bad as they've been in the secondary all year in the last 3 years probably. So everyone's going to be on Dallas in this game. And what's the Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett thing? Sell the rumor, buy the news.
Fearful and fearful.
Be bold when yes, that.
Craig's Spidey. Anytime everyone starts agreeing on something, Craig's Spidey senses start tingling. Like Steven Ruiz moved Dak up, I think, into the top 5 of his quarterback rankings, or it was like he moved him quite a bit up. Dak over the last 6 games, 20 touchdowns, 2 picks.
Yeah,
123 passer rating. We're all finally on board.
Everybody's beginning to come around, but I'm not. No, look, I'm not saying that at all. Dak was on my fantasy team this year. He's been incredible. I've loved watching him. He's been like perfect. He's like the no yes guy. Bill always says that when describing quarterbacks. Like this entire season, I've been waiting for it to end, and it hasn't yet. And my guess would be is, if it's going to happen, it's going to be Sunday night against the Eagles. I mean, this is a huge game for the Eagles.
Yeah.
Both of them, obviously, but.
The Eagles, the flip side, honestly, I don't know because you mentioned Jalen Hurts. The Eagles, I mean, look, it's hard to, you have to nitpick when it's the Eagles or they're 11 or they're 10-2 now. But Mina Kimes, your friend DK, the NFL Live crew at ESPN laid it out really well. Like the Eagles just got smacked by the 49ers and they had only lost 1 game so far this season. But the Eagles offense is like really in a really weird place. We've talked a ton about how all the best teams this year are still kind of, except the Niners are like worse versions of themselves from last year. And the Eagles are kind of the epitome of that. We've talked so much about the Chiefs not being able to pass the ball, but the Eagles, low-key, like the Eagles kind of can't run the ball. And I think it's been completely disguised by the tush push. But weirdly, other than the tush push, the last month, the Eagles, they're not a physical running game. And Mina Kimes had this great breakdown where basically the Eagles are the only team that's seeing more too high safeties than the Eagles is the Dolphins. And obviously that's because of Tyreek Hill, right? And the Eagles are seeing a bunch of too high safeties with A.J. Brown. But the point being, what too high safeties means is you're basically taking a defender in the run game and being like, you're going to handle the pass game now. It's oversimplified, but that's kind of what it is. And like, well, they're the Eagles. They're supposed to run the ball, right? It's like, but they're not. The Eagles are not running the ball very well. They're not running it physically. I don't know if it's Jalen Hurts with the knee injury, Dallas Goedert being out. He's back this weekend, but Dallas Goedert as a blocker and also as a receiver kind of being part of their passing game. But the offensive line isn't that physical. And we don't think of it this way, but DeAndre Swift's been bad in fantasy, and like Jalen Hurts has not been rushing as much for yardage outside of the tush push. And it's as important as this for Dak and the Eagles. I'm really curious what happens to see if the Eagles can run the ball on the Cowboys, because that is a really important way to beating Dallas.
Yeah, it's one of the things, like one of the most glaring things I think I've noticed from watching the Eagles over the last like few weeks is just how slow and ineffective Jalen Hurts looks as a runner. I mean, he like looks like he's limping every time he tries to carry
They're taking on the personality of Hurts almost, the offense. This team is limping forward every game, it seems
You know those like AI, not AI, but it's just like Snapchat filters or whatever filters that kind of just age you and like, here's what I look like at 80. Jalen Hurts runs now like the snap filter of like what Jalen Hurts would look like at 31.
Yeah, what's his 40 time right now? That's what I want.
Dude, honestly, it's Jake Bobo territory. I don't think he could run a 4.9.
It'd be really interesting if they made athletes do mid-season 40 times just to see, like, I don't know, how beat up you are if you can run at your peak speed in the middle of the season.
He does have a lot of touch. So I'm looking at his rushing stats lately. He scored 6 touchdowns in the last 4 games.
They're just tush pushing him in.
But they're
every
all
time.
like, goal line, tush push, sneaks, things like that. He's not like picking up explosive plays typically on the ground, which is like a big part of their run game, I think. And the fact that like whenever he keeps it or they do designed rushes with him, running power type stuff, it's just, it always like seems to blow up in the hangar.
I don't mean to laugh. What?
You've never heard that term?
What does that mean?
It blew up in the hangar. It's
like the airplane hangar?
That never got off the ground.
Okay, Sean McDermott. Wow. We'll get to that in a moment.
Jesus Christ.
But but I was laughing about the Jalen Hurts thing just because if you just don't watch a ton of football and came in and be like, oh my God, Jalen Hurts is hurt. What happened? If you don't watch football, you'd be like, I don't know, maybe it's the shoving him into the crowd of 12 linemen 5 times a game isn't great for his knee. I don't know. Maybe just shoving
squished.
Like, it's like, hey, we should ban this play. Like, why? It's too effective. Like, what? The one where you shove your $250 million employee into the mesh of like 8 dudes who weigh collectively too much to get on an elevator?
See, I think if Philly wins this game, their next 3 games are Seattle, and then they play the Giants, and then they play the Cardinals. They have an incredibly easy schedule after this game, and I think they're going to have. Sorry, Seattle could be dicey.
I'm just kidding.
But in general, I think that Jalen Hurts is going to have no issue putting up stats, and so that's why I think if they can win this game, I would assume he'll be the front runner for the MVP. But it's weird because I feel like there are some MVP seasons where everybody would look back and go, man, Patrick Mahomes, 2018, right? 50 touchdowns, like MVP. If Hurts wins the MVP this year, this is not one of those seasons where we're going to look back and go, Hurts was dominant, best player in the league.
Just unstoppable.
However, I think if Dak won the MVP, I think we kind of would say that. And we would look back and go, that was the year of Dak. Dak was special.
Here's my question with Hurts. And one, Hurts does have the same punishment as Mahomes, where it's like, if this isn't the best year we've seen from you, why? But here's my question with Hurts. What argument for Jalen Hurts being MVP applies to Hurts, but does not apply to Brock Purdy?
I don't think Jalen Hurts is replaceable.
Okay, but like, is Jalen Hurts replaceable? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just saying, like, I mean, Gardner Minshew came in last year and he was pretty solid for the Eagles.
I know David Carr thinks he's replaceable. I know.
I'm not saying he's not. I'm saying like
Heifetz saw Marcus Mariota do one tush push.
He didn't get it either, by the way. The refs gave him that. He did not get that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, Jalen Hurts also has an incredible supporting cast. He also has like AJ Brown and Devontae. Like, again, Devontae Smith won the Heisman Trophy as a receiver. He's the number 2 receiver on the team. They also have an incredible offensive line. They also have an offense that's kind of designed.
I don't see it the same way.
I know, but like, is it just because Jalen Hurts was cool in college and was a 2nd-round pick and Purdy's 7th? You know what I mean? I'm like, if Marcus Mariota,
that's partly.
I think what I'm saying is like, I'm not saying Marcus Mariota could do this, but if Marcus
Hurts
Mariota
is Purdy, Finkel is Einhorn.
That's how I feel though. Like if Jalen Hurts was out for the season in July, horribly, and then Marcus Mariota came in and did what Jalen Hurts had done this year, I don't think a soul would be like, Mariota MVP. It's just because like he's Hurts and it's cool and the Eagles are doing well and we don't really know why.
I think that's fair, but I think you can kind of translate that across any sport. Like if Julius Randle has Steph Curry statistics one year, well, that doesn't actually translate because the 3-point thing would be crazy. But you know what I mean? If Julius Randle put up 30 a game, he's not winning the MVP because he's Julius Randle.
I agree. I think that's kind of the problem in the magic with football is like we kind of don't always know what the hell's going on. But I think there's a lot of stats that sometimes are off, like quarterback stats are offensive team stats. And I think sometimes like you look at Mahomes in 2018 and Brady in 2007, you're like, yeah, but like the quarterback is doing it. I think the Niners this year, it's everyone's kind of like, who doesn't like Purdy is like, well, is this Purdy's stats or are these the 49ers stats? And Brock Purdy is a large part, but not the holistic piece where he deserves to be the single most valuable player in the NFL. And I'm like, yeah, but like that's the same thing with Hurts. That's all I'm saying. I'm like,
I feel like it's apples and oranges though, because Hurts and Purdy are completely different style quarterbacks.
Yeah, I feel like they've built the offense around Hurts. They didn't build it around Purdy.
Right. They dropped Purdy into like a perfect system for him.
They put floaties on Purdy and dropped him into a pool, and Jalen Hurts is like paddling the boat.
Hurts is like closer to like what Cam Newton was in his prime, where he's like so unstoppable in the red zone. It like completely changes the like what that offense is. You know what I mean?
I think like healthy Hurts was, but now it's like they're not doing
scored
as many
6
options
touchdowns in the last 4 games.
Because he's getting his ass shoved into the red zone. But like I feel like
it's because he squats 600 pounds.
He can't right now with his knees. 31 years old, and just you know what I mean. I don't know. Whatever. We'll see. We'll see.
Did you say he's 31 years old?
No, I'm saying with the Snapchat filter, it's like he looks 31 years old. This year. Hurts.
He's creaky. He's got like the cane. He's like kind of wobbly. Yeah.
I'm just saying, like I watched Jalen Hurts. I'm like, this guy isn't healthy, and you can kind of tell. That's all. And like the whole.
I think one issue is to button this all up. I do think what's interesting about this year specifically is that the 2 best teams in the league, if you want to call that Philly and San Francisco, are truly, like they are team player teams. They are not individual led squads, and I think so. No one knows what to do because the 2 best teams are teams where everyone is contributing to make this team successful. And it's kind of like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And so, but you feel like you have to award the MVP probably to one of these 2 teams. And yet I think it's kind of like the whole team should be the MVP.